geen as ek hom op charge nie.
Ja, dis die kans sal jy nou net as jy van die battery gee, sonder so lank al onderstaan en net reg lê. Ja, ja, reg het. So daar is die lig. Check maar net ek weet nie hoe hulle gaan loop nie, maar ek ken die pad. Ja, ja, daar weet jy hoe staan. Okay.
As ek sommer reg vir die behandel.
Dit gaan ons vir 50 en 1 keer laat. Nee, maar daar is nog nie. Ek het 100 gesien. Ja, hier is nog al vol. Ja. Ek kan hulle nou so vol van die camera gaan. Ja, dit gaan meer as in vir julle antwoord. Hy nog 2000. Dink ek. 2000. Mooi oor die gaan nie regtig nog alles goed. Hoor jy dan agter die kamera afgesloot? Hey, jy ook nog bly? Ja. Jy kan maar nee, jy kan mense wel wat doen nie af. Hallo. Sy battery vrek dan
ja, Mikkel, ek dink dit gaan fyn, dit gaan cool wees as ons hier dalk staan en net ek en Reinhard like dit nog wat werk.
Wat?
Ja, as Anné gaan praat. Dan het ek twee angles van hom wat dit net kan.
Ja, maar as ons eers net in vandaar. Support vandaar af en dan kan jy maar bring hier. Hoe lank gaan dit nog?
Dit is gewoonlik so 'n uur. Hoor jy?
Nee, wat, ek kan nog niemand lees. Dis die 16de, ek kan maar die ding, wat moet ek doen?
Bogoni bupirima reka ele morena kawena reka ema ratswarana au morena orejoche lesedin rejoroche waar die wilgers welig spruit door een boom sy skadu sprei soos ons groei in kundigheid mag U ons lei sien ons hoe hier lei met die hand laat U sien rus oor ons land. Three strong streams united flow, Africa stands proud and tall. As we learn, we trust, we know God is in control. Bless us, O Lord, guide us with grace. May Northwest be blessed always. Bless us, O Lord, sien ons hier. Ore Jehovah se morena, sien ons, bless us, O Lord.
Thank you. You can be seated. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your Master of Ceremonies for the night, Toby van Dijk. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend a warm word of welcome to you all on this rather chilly Potchefstroom evening. In particular, and on behalf of our Executive Dean, Professor Dumisani Moyo, who unfortunately cannot be with us tonight, I would like to welcome our dignitaries, Professor Frans Wanders, our Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Research and Innovation, Professor Lynette Fourie, the Research Director of the Focus Area Social Transformation, and Professor Pietro de Pree from the School of Professional Studies in Education. I would also like to welcome tonight colleagues from the School of Philosophy at the Noordwes-universiteit, as well as colleagues from elsewhere in South Africa and across the globe. Former and current students of Professor Verhoef, you are welcome here tonight as well, and I would like to welcome the larger philosophy community. And then, of course, I would like to welcome friends and family tonight. In particular, I would like to welcome Professor Verhoef's siblings, 3 brothers and 2 sisters who are with us tonight. His mother, Mrs. Kobie Verhoef, his mother-in-law, Mrs. Marita de Pree. Welcome to the both of you. His spouse, yet again, Professor Pietro de Pree. And then his children, Jan Meyer and Sunette Verhoef. Welcome to the 2 of you as well. And last, but most certainly not least, I would like to welcome our guest of honor, Professor Anné Verhoef. Anné, you also welcome here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now listen to Traumerei by Robert Schumann, Opus 15, number 7, arranged by Davidov for cello and piano, and it will be performed by Jan Meyer and Sunette Verhoef.
Sorry, I just also wanted to say a note about the piece earlier, just to surprise Anné. Anné actually played this piece quite often when I was a child, Sunette as well. She was also a child a long time ago. And I think he really developed a love, he developed our character in a lot of senses, and music was especially one of them. And he doesn't always realize that. So, okay, thank you.
Good evening. I now really have the honor here to introduce Anné to you. You might think you know him, but after hearing his CV, you will know that you didn't really know him. Anné Hendrik Verhoef was born in Kumani, Queenstown, in the Eastern Cape in 1972 as the fourth of 6 children. His father, Anné Johannes Verhoef, was a pastor in the Dutch Reformed Church, and his mother, Kobie Verhoef, was a trained nurse. Anné matriculated at Huguenot High School in Wellington in 1990. He then studied philosophy and literature at Stellenbosch University and completed his BA in 1994. In 1997, he obtained a bachelor's degree in theology, cum laude, whereupon he enrolled for an honors degree in philosophy. As part of an exchange student program, he studied at the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium for 6 months and obtained an honors degree in philosophy in 1999, also cum laude. In 2000, he was ordained as a pastor in the Dutch Reformed Church in Amanzimtoti, where he worked until 2009. In 2003, he obtained a master's degree in theology, also cum laude, and in 2008, a doctoral degree, both from the University of Stellenbosch. Prof Dirkie Smit was his promoter, and his thesis focused on the relation between the Trinity and time. Anné began his academic career in 2010 when he was appointed as senior lecturer at the School of Philosophy at the Noordwes-universiteit. In 2011, 2012, and 2013, he received the Faculty of Arts Top 10 Researcher Award, as well as the NW, the Top 20 Achiever Reward. In 2013, he received the Institutional Teaching Excellence Award in the A category, and in 2014, he was promoted to Associate Professor in Philosophy. In 2014, he received a Research Award to study in Belgium, and in 2016, he received the award for the third most productive researcher in his faculty. In 2017, he received an NRF grant, and the following year, he received the NW Institutional Teaching Excellence Award again. In 2019, he received a C2 National Research Foundation rating as researcher in philosophy, and in 2020 he was promoted to professor in philosophy. He is currently the director of the School of Philosophy and serves on the Senate of the NW. Anné's academic interests are in philosophy of religion, philosophy of Paul Ricoeur, ethics, and the philosophy of happiness. His research focuses mainly on transcendence and the transcendent in contemporary culture, and its relation to ethics, education, meaning of life, and happiness. His academic record testifies to his significant achievements as scholar in his field. He published 36 peer-reviewed articles, 5 peer-reviewed book chapters, and 1 co-edited book. He also wrote 13 popular academic pieces, editorials, and articles which were published on various platforms, for example, The Conversation. As a subject specialist, he peer-reviewed articles for more than 24 national and international academic journals and acted as a specialist peer reviewer for 8 academic books nationally as well as internationally. He furthermore acted as external examiner for 21 master's and PhD dissertations nationally and internationally. He delivered 5 PhD students, which 2 were from the USA, and 14 master students so far, with a further 3 PhD students and 4 master students in process. He supervised 4 postdoctoral fellows, of which 1 was from the USA and the other 1 from the Netherlands. Anné has an outstanding record as innovator and international collaborator in his field of expertise. He gave 8 international guest lecturers on invitation and had 3 international research visits sponsored by various universities, amongst others Loyola from the USA, Free University Amsterdam, Tumani University in Tanzania. He delivered 18 papers at international conferences and 19 papers at national conferences. Furthermore, he's organized 7 conferences and/or symposiums, also both nationally and internationally. He has been part of various international research projects, for example, Metamorphosis of Christianity and Art, Literature and Philosophy, from the Universiteit voor Humanistiek, Utrecht and Accord in Amsterdam. Anné is also co-founder and co-editor of the journal Transformation in Higher Education. Anné is married to Petra de Pree, professor in curriculum studies at the NW, and has 2 children, Jan Meyer and Sunette. He's privileged to have his mother of 81 and all 5 of his brothers and sisters present at this inaugural lecture. I'm now going to ask Petra to come forward to assist Anné with his gown.
Professor Frans Wanders, Professor Lynette Fourie, Pedro de Pre, Professor Moyo, who's with us online, all the other dignitaries, all my colleagues that are here, friends and family, thank you for attending tonight. It's for me a privilege to have you all here, to have this evening finally amid COVID and all the challenges that we had with that. So I'm very thankful that you all could attend tonight. So thank you for that. Thank you also for the introduction and the gown and everything. I feel a lot of pressure on me now to deliver a great speech. So I'll try my best. Let me first say, you've seen my topic, Transcendence, Chance and Happiness. I'll get to the topic, but I first want to say, you've heard in the introduction that I was born in Kumani. It was previously Queenstown in the Eastern Cape. Something of the transcendence, chance and happiness I want to link with my biography. That is sort of chance, sort of given, sort of also linked to my own happiness in my life. But to begin at that point, I was born in Kumani or Queenstown because Queenstown was the closest whites-only hospital during that time. We were living in Transkei. My father was a missionary there, and we had to travel that I could be born there. So if you think about it, I was born as you can call it an apartheid baby, because that was where I was supposed to be born, something I didn't have any control over. It was by chance, you can say, or if it was given. I was born under the idea of apartheid, which influenced and had so many consequences for our country, for all of us. And it was an idea that was questioned later on and rejected. And something of that magic, that a strong idea can structure our lives and control it and even destroy it, our lives, should be rejected because it was questioned, is something that is, I think, fundamentally part of philosophy. To question all ideas that structure and control our lives. And that is why I think I'm so in love with philosophy, to question all these ideas, especially those that have so much power in our lives, and sometimes with such violence. So in one way, philosophy tries to do that, to question this idea, and it does it in a way that really is not comfortable always. It also questions ideas that we strongly believe in, our beliefs, our greatest convictions, that leaves us uncomfortable, that makes us uncertain about life. The philosopher Gilles Deleuze said philosophy is not in the service of the state, not in the service of the church. It serves nobody. No power. Philosophy is there, in his words, to sadden, in a way to make us sad, to let us realize what's really the truth about knowledge, about life, about our certainties. Philosophy that doesn't annoy is not philosophy, he says. So that says something of the challenge of living with philosophy and asking these fundamental questions in your life. But at the same time, there's another side of philosophy that's an age-old enterprise, age-old question of philosophy, with the question of philosophy of how can we live a good and happy life. That's been asked throughout all the ages. I think of Spinoza, who's asked the question about the summa felicitas, the greatest joy. If you go back to Aristotle, who's asking the question about eudaimonia, also about joy, and how to achieve it, this goodness in life. And my own project, my own research project of the last few years links to this question, not to annoy necessarily or sadden, but to ask the question about what can truly make us happy. So I hope my speech, this was the introduction, will in a way give you some joy at least tonight, and help you at least to think further or more concretely about happiness and what adds up to happiness in life. Now, of course, happiness sounds a little bit silly. It sounds like things students do or find or whatever, but of course it's also a serious philosophical theme or concept to consider. And in my speech tonight, I combined it with two other really loaded philosophical words: transcendence, chance, and happiness. And they're not only loaded on their own, it's also in relation to each other. And that's what I want to sort of analyze a little bit tonight. So the question is, of course, why and what and in what way. So the question would be for me, happiness. In what way does transcendence and chance influence or determine even our happiness or concept of happiness in life? So before I can get away, the analytic philosophers would be uncomfortable at this stage because I'm using terms without any definition of it. I must at least define some of these concepts. So let me say I'm going to use these terms in the broader sense. First of all, if I speak about transcendence, it's about the Latin transcendere, to surmount, to climb, to move above. You can explain transcendence as an experience of a border, a limit experience. In some way, we have experiences of this life, and then something sort of we cannot grasp. It's sort of just at the limit of our understanding or our experiences. So at that limit, we can say on this side we have immanence, this real world, the touchable, sensory world. And on the other side, we sort of sense there's something more. We call it transcended. It's above. It's above, higher, further. We can call it metaphysical. We can call it in religious terms the absolute or God or the divine, everything that surmounts us. In the broader sense, I'm going to use transcendence. Chance I will use for our experiences, our daily normal experiences in our human living of every day. We don't have other livings, but in our living that we have, there's something arbitrary, something random, something that we can't control. Zizek says it's the excess of effects that we can't explain through its causes. There's something more, but that you link to chance. By chance or something happened to us. I'm also going to use this in the broader sense, chance, but also in comparison with transcendence, more in the immanent sense. In this life, not something else or somewhere beyond, but here, that sort of by chance determines our lives. And then, of course, the third term, happiness. So happiness is not about or only about a state of mind, of being happy or being joyful or having the experience that everything is fine. It's not even about just well-being, human well-being or human flourishing. It's not only about the absence of pain. It's much more in this speech or in my concept. It's about finding fulfillment, finding meaning, finding true purpose. It's a combination of all these things. And of course, if you start to think about these terms, immediately you can sense there's something more to philosophy, if you're not into philosophy. There's something more because philosophy is often I think, and I hear it often because I'm a philosopher, often sort of frowned upon as something that's just a lot of talk about a lot of things, but doesn't touch with reality, disconnected from the hard facts, the hard sciences. It's something that's sort of not necessary, something esoteric. But philosophy, if you start to hear these definitions, you can get a sense that there's something magic going on here. There are some words, if you start to think about them, that opens up a door to a sort of universe that we need to explore. We need to think about it. We need to think about these concepts. And I only mentioned 3. Because these concepts sort of really boils down to what we believe in and how we act, what we do, where we try to find fulfillment, how we try to make a difference in an ethical way. It's a very concrete and exciting enterprise if we think about that. So what about transcendence, chance, and happiness? Well, first of all, as I explained, happiness is not just this feeling of joy that I want to explore tonight. I rather would like to think about happiness as something that is encapsulating our whole existence. It's more than just a feeling. It's more than just absence of pain, not to repeat myself. So if we want to ask in my question about the relation to transcendence and chance, the question about happiness, the question becomes quickly a question about existence itself. How can we describe our relation to the transcendent or to chance as we exist in the fullness of our being, in the complexity of our being? And if I ask the question of existence, I'm already opening up a door to a whole lot of philosophy and traditions to keep in mind, which I cannot do. But I at least want to think about one aspect of our existence without trying just to describe existence, what it means, but asking the question about the core of our existence. So it's even a more little complicated question to ask about existence. But the interesting thing, if we think about happiness, transcendence, chance, and also unhappiness, to complicate matters a little bit, because we have to think about unhappiness and its place in our lives, also in relation to chance and transcendence, we have to ask the question, what is at the core of our being, of our existence? And that question has been asked throughout the ages in philosophy and in theology, in different traditions. And the interesting thing is, if you start to ask that question and read the history about that, it sort of boils down to two options, if I can simplify. On the one hand, we get the answer that there's something empty behind our existence. Something, if you think about Sartre, that there's a nothingness, a nihilism. We are here by chance, and we cannot say anything more about it. We call it the negative side or negation in philosophy. To say that if you think about our deepest being, there's something fundamentally negative there. You have to sort of fight against it or have to overcome it. Even in a more transcendent sense, we get a notion of our core being as something of negation. If you think about it in Protestant terms, for example, you will quickly hear that we as human beings are fallen. We fall from grace. We're not innocent. We're sinful. We lost our oneness with God. At the core of our being, there's something negative. That is sort of the two big traditions we find if we think about the core of our being. Both of them has very sort of negative implications for happiness, if we start to think about that. If the core of our being, of our existence, is something negative, something lacking, in other words, if we think in an existential way about it, that there's nothingness underneath us, or just that we are here by chance, or that we are fallen, or we lost our oneness with the absolute, in whatever sense we think about the absolute, we're lacking. There's something negative. And if we want to be happy, the challenge would be to overcome this negative, this core of our being. And immediately there's something impossible implicated by it, because if we accept the notion that we are fundamentally, at the core of our being, that there's a negation there, it becomes impossible to overcome it. Then we are trapped in what the happiness industry really wants to push in our lives, to overcome unhappiness in whatever way. To find happiness, however it remains something futile. We will try to find happiness, although we know it's an impossible dream, because at the core of our being, there's always something lacking, always something that we cannot overcome. Negation. That's the overwhelming philosophical tradition. If you think about it, Plato, for example, he said we are not complete human beings on earth. We need a metaphysical to complete us. Aristotle said, no, we're not complete human beings. There's something negative underneath or behind us. We need eudaimonia to strive towards the fulfillment, the goodness of life. We don't have it on our own. If you think about African philosophy, we are not complete human beings on our own. We always need community to make us human beings. So there's something lacking. If you think about a more modern philosopher, it puts it in the extreme about Friedrich Hegel. He will say, no, we as individuals always miss the complete freedom that will only be fulfilled through the world Geist's history. So there's always, or let me say consistently through the history of philosophy and theology as a negation of our core of our being. And that has huge implications, as I said, for happiness, if we accept that negation. Just think for a moment, how many people did not, or do you know, who haven't not yet given up on happiness in life? They think it's a silly idea. They think it's impossible. They will not just strive for it anymore. We know people that are old before their age, who lose their energy for life, who lose a commitment to what they are doing or what they can do. And I think many times the reason behind that is because they feel it's an impossible task. There's always this overwhelming, lacking fundamental part of our being that we will never get rid of. So I will get back to that. The question is, why should we accept this negation as the core of our existence? If it's such a fundamental and such a detrimental thing in terms of our own happiness, why should we accept negation? And the interesting thing here is, if we look or ask people about why is life like this, just on a sort of ordinary level, they will quickly quote some sort of higher authority that will say, no, life is like this because look at the facts. You know those people. Life is just sort of, we are lacking, we are human beings just in this sense. Or they will quote a higher authority like God or the absolute or whatever, a transcendent being, that will say, no, this is how we are. We human beings are like this, and this is it. Or we can say it's by chance, the more imminent sort of notion that we are people that have at the core of our being negation. So my question is now, it moved a little bit, how does transcendence and chance relates to negation, or the opposite, affirmation? Because there's not only the possibility of a negation of our existence, but also the affirmation that you also find in philosophy. So just to sort of clarify, how does transcendence and chance relate to negation? In history, I'm going to mention two examples. Before I do that, negation, if you think about it, perhaps you feel more positive about life now because you're here for a speech on happiness. But negation has to do with this fundamental part of our being that we cannot control. The fact that I'm born in Kumani, on apartheid, or born in this body, or at this time, that I can experience pain, that I will die, that I'm aging, that I have losses in life, amputations, a bee sting, call it what you will, on a different level, that those things are part of our existence, the negation part. So, to think about how chance and transcendence influence negation or affirmation, we can start with, let's say, chance. To think about life just in its immanent sense, before this broader experience of something more. There's at least a tradition to say, well, we are here by chance, and chance or arbitrariness determine that you are here in a woman's body or man's body or whatever in this time. And if you think about it, and now I'm following Jean-Paul Sartre's thought, there's nothing behind our existence. Our existence sort of is there first, and then we have to find the essence of it. If you think about what's behind it, you will find nothing. And there's a problem there, because if there's nothing, it the whole time undermines your being. So he will argue what we have then is at least the freedom, the possibility to create our existence in this life. to find our essence, to say it so, to live a creative life despite the nothingness that undermines it the whole time. So there's something positive there for Sartre, but it's still, if you think about the core of our being, a negation. We are still stuck there in the end. It will be the whole time an effort to overcome the emptiness of our being through different means of creativity or art or whatever to overcome the stuckness and find eventually happiness, which seems to be an impossibility. There's another option. If we take, again in the Protestant terms, because that's the, I think, more familiar context, if we think about that, we lost our oneness with God, the completeness, and that we are sinful as, and I'm going to use Kierkegaard, the theologian Søren Kierkegaard here. We lost that oneness with God. There's something that we have to do to retain that happiness. We have to redeem it, actually. We cannot find it. So the argument quickly becomes, within the negation argument from Transcendence, that we need to overcome this disjunction or this disunity with God. We have to redeem, and it will take place sometime, somewhere, but not in this life. It will happen in the afterlife, or it will happen in heaven, or it will happen if you think about other religions, if I can really get over my own identity, my own subjectivity, and dissolve into the great universe in whatever way. But it's not possible now, here in this life, even if we try our best. The problem is, at the core of our existence, there's a negation, something we lack. We remain lacking forever, or at least until we're in heaven, or in afterlife, or whatever you want to call it. So the problem with these examples of Kierkegaard and Sartre is that both of them, even if they are informed from a chance or from transcendence, are still stuck in the negation of our existence. There's something lacking. And the attempt to be happy will be futile. Let me interrupt myself there. I ask you to think about people who are unhappy, who just gave up. I think if you hear this story up to here, I think there can be much more understanding why people do that, why they give up on happiness. It seems to be futile. If we believe we are fundamentally evil or fallen, or the world is fallen, or not, or wicked or corrupt in that sense, we can easily say, no, the only possibility for happiness in this life is the afterlife, and that's what I hope for. It's an escape. It's an escape from the reality, the sadness and the joys of this life because of the fundamental negation of my existence. But it also takes place through the chance that informed our existence. If you think about Sartre, then it just becomes an escape from the reality or the lacking of our existence in this world. It's an imminent escape through different means, through the absurdity of playing video games the whole day, or being absorbed in sport, or just spending money, or being on social media, whatever you want to call it, or do. And all of those things are fine and nice, I enjoy them, but that's escape in the world, I think, fundamentally to fulfill this need to be happy. So people either escape in that way or in an afterlife way. If negation is the only answer to the core of our existence. So hopefully, I hope you're also sort of hoping I will be more positive at a certain stage. Because in the philosophical tradition, at least, there are also options of affirmation. A sort of confirmation that there's something meaningful at the core of our existence. A celebration of the fact that we are here and living with all the natural forces that we have around us. Let me open two more options here on this point before I get to the affirmation one. We can ask, what about other variations on transcendence that affirms or informs our concept of negation of our existence? So let's consider for a moment a more transcendent view, that there's really a transcendent God or absolute or being or divine that informs our life and determines what our being is. The more transcendent we project or put or formulate, at least, that being, the more happiness becomes removed, because the wider the gap to cross, and it always removes to a sort of afterlife or ideal place, somewhere that's more and more unattainable. It might get to a situation where there's a resentment for this life and this world and this body and the sorrow around us, that we just want to escape it. If we think about a less transcendent way of thinking about the absolute, one day we can say, no, but the absolute is part of this life, part of the immanent world. To think in less sort of removed terms and try to find something affirmative of our being, we can, for example, think about the theologian philosopher John Caputo's work, who tried to do this, to say, but perhaps God, and this is any God then, but God is more part of our world. We have this tradition of Sally McFay that says, no, God is only embodied in we are the body of God. And that's it. There's nothing transcendent. We have to embrace this world, therefore. But John Caputo takes the other route to make it less transcendent, to get to a point that we can affirm this life, this existence, and this world we live in. He says that if we think about God, we must always remember that we think about him in language. And he uses Derrida's deconstruction to think about the uncertainties in language, the continuous reference in language. And in the end, Caputo would argue that within this talk about God, we cannot have all these certainties about the transcendence that's removed. It's rather a God that we construct continuously and again within the language that has all these uncertainties we live in. He will speak about theopoetics and not a theology. A theopoetics where he would say, if we speak about God, it's always in the poetical, not in the literal sense, not in the removed sense. It's a language you use here that makes sense here for us, or creates sense. But even the term theopoetics has the concept of theos, God there, that can easily become dominant in the discussion. And then we have again the problems with transcendence, with the negation of our existence. Or we can have poetics as the dominant part, which absorb the theos part. And then you end up with what Sartre says. It's again just the art and the creative that needs to redeem us from our existential nature that's corrupt. So even a less transcendence notion that influences our understanding of our being is problematic. So what about the immanent answer? Now here we can, let me move straight to the philosopher Gilles Deleuze. We can think about his work, I think, for example, because he is an immanent philosopher per se. That is his thing, to think about this world as it is in following Spinoza's work. And Deleuze would say, we should embrace chance, take a chance for life for chance's sake. There is something positive here, not, as Sartre would argue, something negative with the chance, the randomness, arbitrariness of life, but that we should realize that all we have is are the moments that we experience that we can actualize. There's potentiality. There are forces of nature and powers that we cannot control, but we should not resist it or think about it in negative ways. We should embrace it, potentialize it, be part of it, change this world, experience the changes of a changed world in ourselves, be in becoming. There's something more, an unbelievable affirmative notion at the core of our being, that is who we should be, and that we can be, and that we can live this life without having to overcome something negative at the core of our being, but just embrace it. Just follow the energy, live our potential. If you think about, Deleuze explains it in terms of sport. If you go surfing, you follow the forces of nature and enjoy it to the fullest. Or if you go hang gliding, I haven't done that yet, I'm too afraid, but then you hang in the air with the wind and you go from one place to the other. That's the magic for Deleuze about the affirmation of our existence. that we should continually continually say we take a chance with chance and affirm our being. There's no problem here with unhappiness. There's nothing to overcome. Negation is rejected or denied. But the problem, perhaps you sense it already, with a complete choice for affirmation is that we sort of lose the potential creativity of unhappiness. That stays part of the complexity of our being, of our existence. Even if we grab affirmation and say, yes, there are all these powers, I like to serve, whatever, you realize there's something more to life that we cannot just throw away. This unhappy aspect, that negation is always lurking or somewhere there in the background. And it's difficult to cope with if we only choose affirmation. It can become very superficial sort of choice in life. Let me explain it this way. I think some of the greatest artwork, some of the greatest composers or songs, different things, have been written by people who were depressed, who were in the sadness of the moments. We cannot reject that. There's some sort of creativity there. I don't want to glorify sadness or depression or any of those emotions or that feeling, but we should also not just throw it away. There's something we should acknowledge at least in this life that brings us even in the experience of unhappiness, happiness. That's the wonder, I think, of being human, in the fullness of it. So, where to now? If we think to just, I don't know, you all look wide awake, but I don't know if you follow the negation, affirmation positions of the core of our existence is the problem. If we, in a way, can combine it, we might have at least an answer there. And the philosopher Paul Ricoeur does it in his dialectical philosophy. He says, we cannot do away with negation, this notion that there's something fundamental, negative, or sad as part of our being, of our existence. We cannot just embrace affirmation. Then we lose too much of the creative potential of negation. We cannot negate negation. So he will say, let's rather see if we can keep these two intentions in relationship with each other. Not in a way that affirmation will swallow up negation in a Hegelian way. Then it would be, again, just a sort of thing that I want to be happy, I want to affirm life, and therefore I will compensate the whole time for all the negative and unhappiness and sadness. If I have to buy things to do it, I will do it. If I have to buy drugs, I will do it. If I, whatever I will do it just to swallow up the negation. I will remember it's there, but you see, it's not a Hegelian dialectic. It's rather a dialectic that says, let's keep both intact with, and here Ricoeur makes I think, a sort of strange, it sounds contradictory, but remember, Ricoeur works in non-binary language. So he will say, there's something affirmative at the core of negation, and it doesn't sound right. But at the core of negation, where we experience something negative or the lacking of our life, there's also something positive. Or at the heart of it, there's something, it sounds contradictory, but what Ricoeur is saying is while we suffer life to a large extent, we suffer the fact that we sit here, not in a painful way, in the fact that you couldn't control the fact that you exist. There's also a part of life that we will, that we determine. And that is the crucial thing to keep intact if you think about affirmation and negation of our life at the core of our existence. That is at the same time something affirmative, that we can will this life, and something determined, something that we cannot have control over, a negative part. And these two should be kept intact. These two should be the whole time be in relation to each other. Because within a relation between affirmation and negation, there's the possibility to say my life is not only determined by chance, my life is not only determined by transcendence, but that there's something at the core of my being that I can also will, that I have control over, in a way that I can also act in a way to find happiness without losing unhappiness or trying to overcome that, but finding happiness the whole time in relation with unhappiness. Not to move on that scale, but with a completeness of my being and a complexity of my being joined together the whole time. So Ricoeur gives us, I think, in this story up to here, I think a little bit hope. That there might be the possibility that we say, but I want to be happy. There's something about happiness, and not happiness again just to have fun, but about finding meaning despite the possibility of the determination of transcendence in chance in my life, to find meaning, fulfillment, and even happiness within this immanent world. To find it in a way through being ethical, through being human, through being one with this world, and not reject those who are sad, those who are poor, those who I don't want to associate myself with because they are different, but to embrace them as part of the complexity, the diversity, the challenge of my life to be a whole person. So here I think, and I'm moving closer to the conclusion, here I think we have some potential. If we think about the original question about transcendence, chance, and happiness, how do they relate? If we take our clue from Ricoeur's dialectical notion of negation and affirmation, we have the possibility to say, first of all, we can say, no, there's negation only at the core of our being. That all we have is the stuckness in the fundamental negativity of our existence. That there's either by chance, if you think about Sartre, only the possibility to try to overcome unhappiness to all extent through art or creativity or finding my essence in my existence, whatever, it will be a continuous hedonic treadmill. You know the story about the mice going around. We will try to find happiness continue. It will never end because there's a fundamental lacking. Determined by chance, or determined, if we think about it, if there's only negation, determined by a transcendence. That we will never be complete human beings, whatever transcendence you want to quote on that point. You will always be lacking, always trying to overcome it. It's a fundamental stuckness with unhappiness in the end. The other side of the coin is to say, let's embrace affirmation of this positive energy of life with all the possibilities that chance gives us, and let's take a chance with all the chances that we get in life and try to be as positive and engaged in this life as we can, with the unlucky side that we have to suppress the unhappiness that always will pop up. So it will be a commitment to a sort of happiness with a blindness to the unhappiness, which will ruin, I think, in the end, our happiness, or chances for complete and complex human beings. In a more dialectical option, we can say, but perhaps we should accept that we have the ability to understand ourselves as suffered and world. That within this immanent space we find ourselves, there is no unhappiness to overcome. That's not a challenge in life. To be happy and forget about all the unhappiness, but rather to be happy with the complete oneness, acknowledgement, awareness of all the sadness, unhappiness that's always be part of this concrete life we live in. If we start to think about this happiness or happiness in this way, it opens up the possibility to move away from a determined life, either by chance or transcendence, and make a choice for commitment, an ethical sort of responsible way we live, where we can try to find meaning, try to contribute meaning, where we can try to find happiness and try to contribute happiness to others' life. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I really enjoyed that. It made me happy to... Another applause, the speech. So, and I'm also happy it's done now, because now I can relax a little bit. I don't see anybody asleep, so I really hope you enjoyed it. It's now my privilege also to say a word of thanks. Toby, can I continue with that? I think this is the more difficult part for me, to say a word of thanks. Of course, to become a professor doesn't fall out of the air. It takes, how did I say, it takes a whole village to raise a child, and it's true in my case as well. So let me first thank my mother who's here. Dankie ma vir alles. Dit is 'n voorreg dat ma vanaand hier is. Ek waardeer dit. Also, I have to mention my dad, who always supported us. All our children can testify to that in all our endeavors, but also, I think, especially academic. I think he was an academic by heart, always reading in his study. So I'm thankful to him for his contribution. Also to my brothers and sisters, we in a way a family that really support each other and try to find the best in each other. So I'm so happy that it's an unbelievable privilege to have to have all of you here. It makes me happy in the complexity of life. Okay, now it feels, I feel a little bit sad, but that's part of happiness to me as well. Yeah. Okay, and then of course, Pietro, I have to thank you as well for all your support and your love, for all these philosophical conversations we are having. It enriched my life. Thank you for that. And my 2 children, who I'm so proud of. I can't believe you are my 2 children. You need it, yeah. Thank you, Jan Meyer and Sinet. The other family who are here, I'm not going to mention all the names. Also my colleagues, it's such a privilege to work at Noordwes University at philosophy with colleagues that really wants to help each other, to think further, to be sharper, to be human beings and not only academics. So I'm really proud of us as a team, as philosophy school. Also my friends that are here, in a way I always experience, if I think about my friends, you don't choose your friends. In some way it just works out randomly or by chance. But I'm thankful to have friends also in my life that supports me in so many ways. Then also the people who organized and helped organize this evening, the dignitaries, and the behind-the-scenes staff, Santorin, Toby, also Izet, Mia, who's not here, other people who worked hard. I'm so glad that I could finally have this evening, and it took a lot of arrangements, so thank you for all that. Also, people who are on YouTube, how many people are turned in? Can you see the number there? I want to know how many likes I have at this stage. 80. 80. No, I thought it would be 80,000, so I'm a little bit... Okay, but also the philosophy community in South Africa, I appreciate, and other colleagues, also some of my students. There are so many people that I can thank, and I don't want to mention some names. I might forget some. So thank you again, all of you who attended tonight. I'm trying to think quickly if I forgot somebody. So yeah, thank you, Toby. Yeah, thank you.
Anné, you're not off the hook yet. I'm glad we are in the pandemic. I could put up my mask because my jaw fell to the floor and everyone would have thought, what is this guy doing? You amazed us for a hardcore natural scientist engineer. At the inaugural lecture, you have to weave in some philosophy. And you've got PowerPoints and you've got personal. Here you stood without anything in front of you. That amazed me the most. It was fantastic to learn. you know, when you started, I had the mouse in the wheel in my mind because I was thinking, now he's saying this, now he's saying that. And at the end, I could clearly see the theology background because a good sermon has got 3 components. And you had the 3 components. You climbed the ladder. You were not here by chance. Your CV testifies to that. And I think everyone here is very, very happy. And we want to congratulate you again. And from the management of the Northwest University, this is just a certificate to commemorate your inaugural lecture for tonight. And we appreciate your inputs at the university. And with this pen, we trust many more publications will flow from it. Thank you very, very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this evening's procedures. Will you kindly stand for the national anthem and then remain standing when the academic procession leaves the hall? And then, ladies and gentlemen, I also request that you please gather in the foyer just outside of this hall for the photos to be taken, after which we will leave for Christagalli, where we will enjoy dinner together. Thank you.